The US dollar, aka the king of currencies, holds the power to devastate businesses, small scale or large scale, doesn't matter, and the entire economies of countries. It can make a country rich, or it can destroy each and every aspect of that economy. We are all familiar with the US dollar, how it manipulates the market, and how the US unjustly uses it to counter rival nations around the globe. Today we will look further into how the dollar holds the key to such powers and not other currencies like Yuan or Ruble. Historic context. First, we have to discuss how paper money was introduced to the world. The use of paper as a currency is not new, as it was also used in ancient China, but was later banned by the Ming Dynasty, for some reasons, probably because it didn't hold any value. The paper is the same today. We are not adding some gold and silver for making paper now, and it still has no intrinsic value as compared to gold, silver, and other goods, which have been used as the currency throughout the history of mankind. Just think why we humans, who dealt with gold and silver all their history, suddenly have so much value for this useless paper money. It's a well-said quote. Today, the only thing that distinguishes the value of a banknote from any other paper is trust. But how paper money prevailed today in the modern day is the real question. Now here is the dark truth. The Bretton Woods Conference was the gathering of 730 delegates from all 44 allied nations in Bretton Woods, United States, to regulate the financial order of the world after the conclusion of World War II. Remember, the world. But behind the scenes of this so-called restoration of financial order, there was a dark agenda that no country can produce gold and silver coins but paper money. For that, IMF and World Bank came into existence. At least it was one of the reasons they came into being. And guess who holds the power now? Yes, the dollar. Because paper money in the modern system is structured in such a way that the dollar remains the hard currency. Even if China is becoming powerful now, overcoming the dollar is not an easy task. Now let's move ahead in our video. Printing money is unhealthy for economy. Printing money may seem like a quick fix for economic problems, but in reality, it can have dire consequences for an economy. One of the main issues with printing money is the rapid inflation it can trigger. When the government prints excessive amounts of money, it floods the market, increasing the money supply without an increase in goods and services. As a result, prices skyrocket and the purchasing power of the currency decreases. Everyday items become more expensive, making it harder for people to make ends meet. As inflation rises, people lose faith in the currency, causing them to hoard goods or convert their money into more stable currencies. And now here we come to know that those stable currencies are no other than the dollar, and this further devalues the domestic currency. Printing money can lead to economic instability. It distorts the natural mechanisms of supply and demand, making it difficult for businesses to plan and invest. While printing money may offer short-term relief, it ultimately undermines the stability and health of an economy. And the best example of this is Zimbabwe, where the government printed large amounts of money and distributed it among the people. As a result, they had to make notes of 1 billion and 1 trillion. The currency collapsed and the US dollar was adopted. Money printing superpower of the US. The US has utilized the ability to print money and make an impact on the global economy. At the heart of this superpower is the Federal Reserve, the central banking system of the United States. The Federal Reserve has the authority to create and issue money, making it a major player in shaping the US economy. The United States, with its massive economy and status as a global superpower, has an advantage. Its ability to print more money gives it tremendous influence over the global financial system. As we know, the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. This status gives the United States immense power and influence. The money printing superpower of the United States allows it to stimulate its economy during times of crisis, which other countries cannot, not even China or other big players. By injecting newly printed money into the system, the US can increase liquidity and encourage lending and investment. Furthermore, the global dominance of the US dollar has facilitated international trade and provided stability to the global financial system, as countries rely on the dollar for stability and security. In conclusion, the United States money printing superpower is a key driver of its economic strength and global influence, which it has infamously used over the decades. The power of United States dollar. The US dollar holds a prominent position in the global economy, and the influence it wields is literally beyond the limits. The US dollar is the world's most widely accepted and recognized currency. It serves as the backbone of the global financial system and plays a crucial role in international trade and finance. The power of the dollar stems from several key factors. Firstly, the United States has a robust and stable economy, and we know how, thus making the dollar a safe haven for investors seeking stability and security. The dollar's dominance extends to the financial markets. It is the most widely used currency for international transactions, including commodities such as oil and gold. This gives the United States significant leverage in global markets. The US dollar's role as the world's reserve currency gives the United States immense influence over global policies. It allows the US to impose sanctions, exert diplomatic pressure, and shape international trade agreements, and there are numerous examples of that. Fluctuations in the value of the dollar can have ripple effects across the globe, impacting the economies of other countries and their citizens, and mostly it fluctuates on purpose. US intervention in other countries. Oil has been a significant driver of US intervention in other countries. As the world's largest consumer of oil, the United States has sought to secure access to vital energy resources to fuel its economy and maintain its global influence. The US intervenes in countries that are rich in oil reserves. The desire to ensure a stable and reliable oil supply has often influenced the decision-making process. Control over oil resources provides the United States with strategic advantages, both economically and geopolitically. Access to oil reserves shape global energy markets and grant significant influence over nations like China and Russia. US interventions for oil and money have resulted in long-term consequences, including political instability, social unrest, and regional conflicts. The local populations are left grappling with the aftermath of intervention. The CIA said that Saddam Hussein possessed chemical warfare weapons. Turns out there were none. The US wanted its presence in the Middle East, a strong one, to exert its influence, and the people were left with ISIS and other terror groups. Same happened with other countries, and obviously the oil supply to the US was made stable and the US economy thrived like always. But times change. How the US manipulates the market. The United States, as the world's largest economy, wields considerable power in the global market. Through a combination of policies, regulations, and financial tools, it has the ability to influence and manipulate various aspects of the global economy. One way the US manipulates the global market is through its monetary policies. The Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, can adjust interest rates and implement quantitative easing measures to stimulate or cool down the economy. Quantitative easing makes the US economy stable, but harshly affects the global financial markets. And the US has been using this tactic throughout decades, even after knowing the consequences and its impact on the developing world. Furthermore, the US dollar status as the world's reserve currency gives the United States significant leverage. By controlling the supply of dollars and influencing exchange rates, the US can shape international trade and financial flows. The United States also employs trade policies and negotiations to manipulate the global market. Tariffs, trade agreements, and sanctions can be used strategically to protect domestic industries, gain market access, or exert pressure on other countries. US multinational corporations play a pivotal role in global markets. With their size, influence, and access to resources, they can exert significant control over supply chains, pricing, and market dynamics, favoring only US interests. Looting and exploitation. After World War II, the United States led efforts to set up the Bretton Woods system, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, which together with the Marshall Plan, formed the international monetary system centered around the US dollar. In addition, the United States has also established institutional hegemony in the international economic and financial sector by manipulating the weighted voting systems, rules, and arrangements of international organizations, including approval by 85% majority, and its domestic trade laws and regulations. By taking advantage of the dollar status as the major international reserve currency, the United States is basically collecting seigniorage from around the world, and using its control over international organizations, it coerces other countries into serving America's political and economic strategy. The United States exploits the world's wealth with the help of seigniorage. It costs only about 17 cents to produce a $100 bill, but other countries had to pony up $100 of actual goods in order to obtain one. It was pointed out more than half a century ago that the United States enjoyed exorbitant privilege and deficit without tears created by its dollar, and used the worthless paper note to plunder the resources and factories of other nations. The hegemony of the US dollar is the main source of instability and uncertainty in the world economy. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the United States abused its global financial hegemony and injected trillions of dollars into the global market, leaving other countries, especially emerging economies, to pay the price. In 2022, the Fed ended its ultra-easy monetary policy and turned to aggressive interest rate hike, causing turmoil in the international financial market and substantial depreciation of other currencies, such as the euro, many of which dropped to a 20-year low. As a result, a large number of developing countries were challenged by high inflation, currency depreciation, and capital outflows. This was exactly what Nixon's Secretary of the Treasury, John Connally, once remarked, with self-satisfaction yet sharp precision, that the dollar is our currency, but it is your problem. With its control over international economic and financial organizations, the United States imposes additional conditions to their assistance to other countries. In order to reduce obstacles to US capital inflow and speculation, the recipient countries are required to advance financial liberalization and open up financial markets so that their economic policies would fall in line with America's strategy. According to the Review of International Political Economy, along with the 1,550 debt relief programs extended by the IMF to its 131 member countries from 1985 to 2014, as many as 55,465 additional political conditions had been attached. The United States willfully suppresses its opponents with economic coercion. In the 1980s, to eliminate the economic threat posed by Japan and to control and use the latter in service of America's strategic goal of confronting the Soviet Union and dominating the world, the United States leveraged its hegemonic financial power against Japan and concluded the Plaza Accord. As a result, yen was pushed up, and Japan was pressed to open up its financial market and reform its financial system. The Plaza Accord dealt a heavy blow to the growth momentum of the Japanese economy, leaving Japan in what was later called 3 lost decades. America's economic and financial hegemony has become a geopolitical weapon. Doubling down on unilateral sanctions and long-arm jurisdiction, the United States has enacted such domestic laws as the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act, and the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, and introduced a series of executive orders to sanction specific countries, organizations, or individuals. Statistics show that U.S. sanctions against foreign entities increased by 933% from 2000 to 2021. The Trump administration alone has imposed more than 3,900 sanctions, which means 3 sanctions per day. So far, the United States had or has imposed economic sanctions on nearly 40 countries across the world, including Cuba, China, Russia, Iran, and Venezuela, affecting nearly half of the world's population. The United States of America has turned itself into the United States of sanctions, and long-arm jurisdiction has been reduced to nothing but a tool for the United States to use its means of state power to suppress economic competitors and interfere in normal international business. This is a serious departure from the principles of liberal market economy that the United States has long boasted. Economic crisis in America. The economic crisis in America stems from a combination of factors. Mounting levels of debt, income inequality, and systemic issues within the financial sector have all played a role in creating a fragile economic environment. The crisis has had a profound impact on everyday Americans. Job losses, stagnant wages, and increasing household debt have left many families struggling to make ends meet, while others have faced the risk of losing their homes. The growing national debt and budget deficits have further exacerbated the crisis. crisis. The government's spending patterns and inadequate policies have strained the economy, leaving little room for maneuver in times of crisis. The crisis sparked social unrest and calls for economic reforms. Many Americans are demanding changes to address income inequality, improve access to affordable healthcare and education, and create more equitable economic opportunities. To address the economic crisis, comprehensive measures are needed, but the measures that America uses are the real problem. How the US gets out of this trouble and the world economy is affected. When people don't have money to buy products and goods, and companies cannot sell them below a certain amount of money that the people don't have, it is actually an economic nightmare, and this is where the US utilizes quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is a monetary policy tool used by central banks, including the US Federal Reserve, to stimulate the economy during times of recession or deflationary pressures. It involves the purchase of government bonds and other financial assets to inject money into the economy. Quantitative easing can provide several benefits to the United States. By increasing the money supply and lowering interest rates, it stimulates borrowing and investment, leading to economic growth, job creation, and increased consumer spending. It comes at a cost to other countries. As the US economy recovers and interest rates remain low, capital tends to flow towards higher returns, potentially causing currency appreciation and creating challenges for export-dependent countries. Currency appreciation resulting from quantitative easing can harm other countries' exports, making their goods more expensive and less competitive in international markets. This can lead to trade imbalances, reduced economic growth, and job losses in those countries. Furthermore, quantitative easing in the United States can trigger currency devaluations and volatility in other countries. This can cause economic instability, capital flight, and financial market disruptions. How Russia and China are challenging the dollar. We are in favor of using the Chinese yuan for settlements between Russia and the countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, said Putin in a conference. So the world's second largest economy and its largest energy exporter are actively trying to dent the dollar's dominance as the anchor of the international financial system. Will they succeed? The dollar is America's superpower. It gives Washington unrivaled economic and political muscle. The United States can slap sanctions on countries unilaterally, freezing them out of large parts of the world economy. And when Washington spends freely, it can be certain that its debt, usually in the form of T-bills, will be bought up by the rest of the world. Sanctions imposed on Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, combined with Washington's increasingly confrontational approach to China, have created a perfect storm in which both Russia and China are accelerating efforts to diversify away from the dollar. Their central banks are keeping less of their reserves in dollars, and most trade between them is being settled in the yuan. They are also, as Putin noted, making efforts to get other countries to follow suit. The Biden administration has handled the economic war against Russia extremely effectively by building a coalition in support of Ukraine that includes almost all the world's advanced economies. That makes it hard to escape from the dollar into other highly valued stable currencies, such as the euro or the pound or the Canadian dollar, because those countries are also countering Russia. All that said, Washington's weaponizing of the dollar over the past decade has led many important countries to search for ways to make sure that they do not become the next Russia. The share of dollars in global central bank reserves has dropped from roughly 70% 20 years ago to less than 60% today and falling steadily. The Europeans and the Chinese are trying to build international payment systems outside of the dollar-dominated SWIFT system. Saudi Arabia has flirted with the idea of pricing its oil in yuan. India is settling most of its oil purchases from Russia in non-dollar currencies. Digital currencies, which are being explored by most nations, might be another alternative. In fact, China's central bank has created one. All of these alternatives add costs, but the past few years should have taught us that nations are increasingly willing to pay a price for achieving political goals.